All right. It's the, what is this, 17th? Sucks. I have to put on my glasses just to tell what day it is. July 17th, 2026. Simone Anderson, 5, 4, 3. Hi there. I'm Charlie Simons here on Do Not Talk. Talk about two things you're never supposed to talk about, politics and religion, but I talk about all different kinds of things too. And I most especially talk to the things or talk about the things and to the people that the media ignores. That's my real go-to. The media is ignoring those candidates running on the right, the conservatives running for office. Yep, I'll put them on. Media's not talking to authors who go against their leftist narrative. Yep, I'll put them on. One of my favorite people who I've just been so honored to get to know and to even call a friend is Simone Anderson. The way I met her was just great. It was coincidental, and I'm just glad it happened. I'm really grateful that I've gotten to know her better, and I've had her on the show. That's so fun. Do you hear that noise? Did that come through on the microphone? The heck was that? Anyway, okay, let's pick it up from there. It sounded like some roaring at my one of my doors here, but I know what it is. I figured it out. So all that aside, I'm taking way too long to get to the point here, aren't I? Simone had an opportunity to go to Las Vegas for a little convention thing there put on by the John Birch Society, Red Pill 78, something like that. Sorry I missed it. It sounds like it was an incredible thing, and a lot of stuff has been revealed. A lot of things that are coming. A lot of stuff that we all called conspiracy theories 6 months ago are now happening. All the people who complain that, oh, the arrests aren't happening, I'm all mad. I'm not going to vote in the midterms, which I'm telling you, you're no longer my friend if I hear you say that. Don't quit. Anyway, people are saying they're not even going to vote because they're frustrated because there's not been any arrests and nothing's happening. Well, did you see President Trump's speech Thursday night? Things are happening. They've been happening behind the scenes. They're not going to be leaking crap like the Biden and the Obama folks always did. Bill Clinton was notorious for that too. His staff always leaking stuff out. And I'm quite convinced it was all a salvo. It was all a shot across the bow. And they would always leak these little things. Notice on a Friday afternoon, they know that the news cycle, if it's negative, the news cycle basically goes away on the weekends. Most people don't watch the news. That's why there's no nightly news on the weekends with most local television stations and so on. We just don't care. It's the weekend. We'll get back to it on Monday, worrying about how to fix the country, right? So they release stuff on a Friday afternoon late, knowing that even if it does hit the newspapers or TV or whatever, far fewer people will see it or read it. If it's positive news, oh yeah, it's always like towards the beginning of the week that they release the leak, that kind of stuff out there. But so much of it is to get us used to the idea. Bill Clinton was famous for that. He wanted to do something very nefarious and crappy to all of us. They'd leak that out. It hit the papers, it hit the radio talk shows and so on, and we'd all be outraged. And then it died down and we'd forget about it in 2 or 3 days and move on to whatever is shiny in the news and forget about it. And then he would do it. The left has been doing that for years and years. The Republicans don't do that. President Trump doesn't do that. He himself will say, yeah, you know what? We need to own Greenland. There's no leaking. There's no, seeing which way the wind blows and how the public's going to react. No. And furthermore, if you can't figure out why that's strategically important, good luck. He doesn't bother explaining. He just goes, this is what we're doing. That's what he did in his speech. This bombshell of a speech talking about election fraud. I find it hilarious. All the media screaming about, why didn't he just let this go? We had a foreign country, a communist country, interfering in more than one election, federal elections, actually adversely affecting the outcomes of those elections. And we're supposed to just let that go? Yo, you must be high, you hypocritical freaks in the media. If it were the other way around, you'd never let it go. So why don't you just sit down and shut up? Because things are happening now. I'm talking directly to the media. My peeps. I was in it all my life. Now I'm part of the alternative media, and so is Simone Anderson, and she was at this Red Pill conference in Las Vegas. And there's some stuff that's been revealed that I want you to see. But in the meantime, I did want to throw do you know Carl Higbee? Love this guy. Newsmax. He feels the way I feel when it comes to the left and Democrats in general.
On the 4th of July. Here, we got 8 Army helicopters decided to do this awesome flyover.
Oh, it's going to be fun. I mean, you can't beat it, especially for America's 250th birthday. Those beaches are going to be packed. And we're hoping, pending a few different variables, we're going to try and stay safe, but we're hoping to really give them a show and try and get as low as feasibly possible.
Yeah, look, a couple 27, 28-year-old Apache pilots decided that they were just going to fly over a beach, over the water, to do some America stuff. And 99% of the people on the beach were like, yeah, this is awesome. They thought it was the coolest thing ever. But then you got some anonymous fat lib who couldn't even put their name on the complaint, complained about it to the Army, and then all 8 of these pilots get suspended for it. Thankfully, Pete Hegseth got wind of this and reversed everything this morning. Then Sean Parnell, the Assistant Secretary of Defense, tweeted out, effective immediately, the suspension of all South Carolina pilots has been lifted. Carry on, Patriots. But look at the response from liberals who thought the suspension was like somehow the right move. One of my favorite beta males on the internet, Brian Krasenstein, tweeted out, for the MAGA folks who are pissed off at the pilot suspension, here are the reasons why. And then he proceeds to list like a bunch of safety concerns. Powerful rotor wash can blast sand, shells, and debris into people. Except they're over the water, and there isn't even rotor wash on the water. That's because they're too high for that. But then there's also a ton of people cheering, though. He went on, beach umbrellas, towels, and other loose items can become dangerous projectiles. Yeah, I don't see any of that happening either, dude. Extremely loud noise can cause discomfort or hearing. Oh, Brian, were your widow ears hurt? Blowing sand can reduce pilots' visibility. Again, they're over the water. Stop making stuff up. But you also do realize that pretty much all of our airmen's training has been based on a desert profile from Iraq and Afghanistan. What do they have a lot of over there? Sand. We're trained to fly and that kind of stuff. Honestly, does he even hear himself? Low altitude crowds leaves little margin for emergency. Dude, stop. Tell me you don't know anything about what you're talking about without actually saying it. Look, I have been in helos, flying in drainage ditches, doing like 90 miles an hour with 2 to 3 feet on either side of the rotor blades at night, just for fun. I think these combat pilots are pretty capable enough to fly like 20 feet off the water, 40 miles an hour on a bright, clear, sunny day with no one shooting at them. I mean, he was reaching for the bottom on this one, too. People can be startled, panicked, or lose their footing. Military safety procedures. No, they don't discourage this. Just shut up and go away. This is the product. Brian Krasenstein is the product of participation trophies. Here is a list of reasons that pilots should actually do that. 1, it's the 4th of July. 2, it's cool. And 3, America. This is why people hate liberals. They ruin everything. a UFC fight at the White House to a simple flyover on the beach on the 4th of July. Just go away. No one wants you here. And if it's so bad and you hate it so much, just leave. I hear Iran is great this time of year.
Just go away. That's the point I'm at right now. I'm so done with all of it. I really want them to just go away. Will that happen? I don't know. Simone Anderson, front and center. Ready? Hit it. There. Howdy.
Hi.
What's going on? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing really good. I'm in beautiful Southern California and just enjoying being out of the 110-degree weather up north. I'm sure you're feeling it. And yeah, and I did have a good time. Thank you for the warm interview. I had a great time at Red Pill. We had Mr. Griffin, who wrote the Creature from Jekyll Island, which is a big hit for all of us in the independent media and people that try to understand the structures that rule our lives. We had Alex Newman, we had Michael Yon.
Wow.
It was, yeah, Michael Yon did a great job talking about how they've infiltrated and how there's camps of foreign hostile people with all over the world. That's what's going on in Ireland right now. They've got camps full of all these people surrounding me. Excuse me?
They're doing what now again?
They're bringing in all the foreign people they brought in. A lot of them are in refugee camps, and they're all designed to circle all the cities of, like in Ireland right now, that's the issue around Dublin. They've got all these refugee camps that are full of people who want to openly, as part of the Islamic faith, is to take over the world and implement Sharia law. So it's just moving along, and this is what we're seeing. Our countries, our government, and our military have facilitated it, and they're the ones who've moved all these foreign hostile actors into our country over the last few years. And this is what we're really fighting, is the infiltration, and then any time it could go kinetic. And this is planned as part of, they couldn't beat us with ideas, and they couldn't beat us because we all carry our own guns. And so they've had to infiltrate us from the inside. So we have to re-infiltrate them back and take our country back. And that's what the John Birch Society, who put this event, they get a lot of negative information about being a white supremacist group. There was people from all different races and backgrounds. In fact, I met this really interesting man from Romania, and he was telling me the real story of what was going on during the fall of communism and the missing money and all the things that we find everywhere, and that he was just a puppet of the deep state himself. So met a lot of Michelle Melendez, one of my show, a good friend of mine. She was there. She's just coming out with a new book called Signs and Symbols, but she was there promoting her book, The Death of Freedom, that talks about how America got into this situation and what we can do to confront it. So it was literally from 7 in the morning till 11 and 12 o'clock at night, when they turned the lights off in the pavilion, were people talking and exchanging ideas. And if you can get to one of these kind of events, especially if you're someone who's feeling isolated and like your friends and family think you're insane, I would suggest connecting. You can always connect with these people on Facebook groups. And depending on, some people have interest in technology legislation. Some people are into the voter. I met a really interesting guy. I think sent you his email. He's a voter investigation specialist, and he just retired. And he's going to be doing that full time, going around and helping campaigns and counties try to stick to the rules, because not every county wants to cheat. Not every government has hired people who hate their government to work in their offices. And then other people have just been bought out. So just the old, just greed and money and power.
They all just need to go. I don't
So
know
yeah,
how,
and then you and I, Oh, I was just going to say, you and I evented that amazing event in Angel Camp where Charlie came and I was a speaker. And we talked about local rural issues, farming, water supply, perma farming, which is a super interesting topic about keeping your soil replenished and lively. And I spoke on mining because mining is the secret to California, and tapping our natural resources is the key to not only pulling California out of its economic problems, but pulling our whole nation and supplying the resources we need. Why are we investing in Africa when we can just invest right here? And the true goal is not only to help us benefit from our assets, but it's to keep our young people home and to pay a living wage of around $40 an hour, which is the average wage in a mining job. Just at the beginning, the average mining job pays about 20 some thousand more dollars than the average person in that kind of skill set job. So
Wow.
if we could also bring our families home with the new technology. Mines are being used, computers, and the way geologists use computers and mapping and all this kind of stuff. There's new technologies that are more safe. They're going back to old mines, and there's because the price of gold is so high, they're using the tailing ponds. But what people have to remember is the cost of mining has not increased. What has lost value is the currencies worldwide. So it takes more currency to buy the same gold that costs the same amount. It's
Uh,
the value of our dollar that's being lost against the gold value. So a lot of people say, oh, gold is going up and it's getting more expensive. But in reality, our currency has crashed. And that's why it takes so much money to buy an ounce of gold. I know I'm always just a chirpy bird with all this happy news. Do you want to go into why they killed Lindsey Graham? Could that be a lighter topic? May he rest in peace. I'm not
uh,
trying to joke
no,
about the death of somebody,
I'd
but
like
it
to
might be
hear
a
it.
little lighter than the fall of the currency. But in fact, it is related because I believe that he was taken out by the banking cartel system, which is the military industrial complex deep state that is the banking cartel. And the military and the intelligence agencies are just aspects of that world power that we've discussed on your channel, where the Vatican and Rome still rules the world. The City of London is the financial arm. And unfortunately, the United States is the blood and the money. European countries have been robbing us blind. I think we gave $2 to $5 billion a year to Italy, but we can't use the base we built there. So we're just being sucked blind, and none of those countries have a GDP. So I really wonder if they would have any GDP at all if the United States hadn't pumped 2 to 5 billion in there. Because you have to remember the countries are much smaller in Europe, and the populations are less in some. They don't have the big mass cities like, for instance, India and China do. So they have a shrinking population. And because they implemented socialism over the last few years and put off the cost of their military and their protection, and have created all kinds of weird laws that, make it beneficial for them to do business in the United States, but not the other way around, they're in trouble. And Germany has been they've been lying for years since the Biden administration, but finally they admitted that they are in a recession. England, according to the Financial Times, has its worst financial time in 300 years. France is on the verge of civil war
Wait,
and total
wait,
collapse.
hang on. Say that about England again.
England, according to the article I read, a financial analyst saying that, according to the numbers, England has had its worst year in 300 years. They have a massive system. They've chased all the business out, just like most European countries.
Financially.
They're service oriented. They brought in tens of millions of people who don't pay into the system. And, not that everybody who immigrated, of course,
In
they're
fact,
not,
they
they're
drain
paying a
off of
very
it.
small percentage because on the other side, they're taking the rent and the social health care and all those things. And even today in the United States, the average person collecting benefits is going to collect 60% more in benefits than they did contribute. And that's just a number from a few years ago. I imagine it's a bigger number now. So these problems are occurring all over the West. It's designed to fail. They spent since World War I collapsing Africa and implementing totalitarian governments. They spent it destroying South American countries were once rich and wealthy. Now these people are flooding in caravans to the United States because things. So the final target is the United States, and we are at war. We have been at war, and this is the reality. And it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat or a pink or a blue or whatever you are, a green. The reality is we're all in the same boat and we're all headed in the same direction. And if we don't correct our steerage, we're gonna get shipwrecked somewhere, and our society could be trapped into communism or one of these authoritarian efforts that, again, were first created and conceived by the same group of bankers that now control the world. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Lindsey Graham's death, the CIA, and what he has been trying to do over the last, say, year, and what
Good.
most likely caused his
Yeah.
death.
What do you think?
So this is what I've only been studying it for a few days. I'm much better at history because there's much more information to grab from. But I have watched people that have had good information in the past, and some people who are, in that world themselves and being interviewed on other stations. So from the very beginning, I thought it was suspicious because of the things you always need to look at what's going on. And the project that he was involved in and that had him killed was called Project Saxidamus, and it's Saxidamus. And he was assassinated using advanced technology that literally melted his heart. More arrests and deaths are to be expected over the next few months, especially after last night's announcements. Since the 1970s, the CIA has had the poison heart gun technology that caused heart attacks. And many people, this is the technology that people talked about with Brett Breitbart and some other key figures that have passed
Andrew
away.
Breitbart, you mean? Andrew?
Andrew Breitbart, sorry. Yeah, Brett. I have a friend named Brett Breitbart. Sorry. Andrew Breitbart. I was literally with him a few weeks before he died doing an event and helping him.
No kidding. Wow.
And I'd known people who had heart attacks and been with them right before. We were out in the hot sun all day. He was just fine. He was, he wasn't super thin or anything, but he was a healthy weight. And you usually, when you're around people who are going to have a heart attack, they're really short-winded. Their face is kind of puffy. One thing that being 62 has let me do is understand what it looks like when people are starting to have heart problems, because you've been watching your friends over the last few years, right? And you've also been taking care of your elderly relatives. So you become pretty familiar with, and just being a woman, you've always taken care of people your whole life. So you become more familiar with like looking at people and seeing, hey, do they look healthy or not? So this isn't a myth or some conspiracy theory. The CIA has had this poison gun technology that caused heart attacks since 1975. And after testifying in front of the church committee, the head of the CIA, exposing this information, his name was William Covey, and he was found shortly after this event drowned in the Potomac. So there was definitely something going on there, and the fact that it was an open murder or something like that, he must have been, some message was being sent, because normally these things are handled. They could have used a heart attack gun on him, right? There was a message being sent with a powerful person like that being found in the river outside the government buildings.
Lindsey Graham had just been in Ukraine.
Right.
War-torn Ukraine, which I've seen videos of people who live there still walking around. Everything's normal. They're doing business as usual, but they're supposed to be under, lockdown, and there's terrible bombing and so on and so forth going on all the time. They sure don't look like it, the people who live there.
Well, I
So
mean, Ukraine, is a large country, and most of the war. Sorry, it's getting really warm where I'm at. The the fighting is going on in the eastern portion of the country, and now that they've moved in, Putin, according to people I watch on the war, really had some restraint in the beginning of the war because they didn't want to destroy the Ukraine or the infrastructure. The Russians are the ones who built a lot of it, right? They're the ones who put in the nuclear facilities. And when they went to break up the Soviet Union, the Russians went in and made them into energy. And that's what Ukraine and a good portion of Europe was using for their energy supply. And they had also found, according to Putin, evidence that one of those missile silos in the EU and the United States and investigators, United Nations, refused to go look at it. But he said he found evidence that they had recommissioned one of those back into a nuclear facility and was begging the international community to come look for themselves, which of course they refused to do. And as you said, Graham had been in Ukraine and he wanted an end to the Ukrainian war, which is a mass money operation, human trafficking, drug cartel, organ harvesting event. And he was, so because he was on the inside and in very powerful positions and also an intelligent asset himself. I'm not saying Lindsey Graham was like this great patriot. I believe he was part of the system. He was operating in the system, but they fight amongst each other in the system. And then some people find God. Some people just change. Some people do get saved by the glory of his grace. And they begin to lead their life in a righteous way. And so, and then often we don't really know, especially in wartime, who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, right? They were put in place a long time ago to achieve goals that they were put in place to achieve. So Lindsey Graham was in favor of ending the war in both Ukraine and Iran because of the money that was being spent and just because he just
hey,
wanted the wars to end.
Simone, stand by a second, please.
Okay.
Yes, Georgia. Yeah, I sent you a text telling you I was on the air. That's okay. What's going on? Hello? Georgia? I don't know if something's wrong or not.
You want to check on her? Or is your dog misbehaving? Is Spike
He's right.
misbehaving, the gang dog?
Never. He's right here.
Aw. Hi,
I'm so
Spikey.
sorry. Excuse me. Here he is.
I'm so sorry to bother you.
That's okay. No. What, is everything okay? Is everything okay?
Oh, yeah, everything's fine, except I can't figure out how to get this one little thing back into the reservoir for the cleaner, the carpet cleaner.
Uh-huh.
I was just wondering if I can borrow your brain
No.
to help me figure it out. I got the shower thing done. That's all.
Oh, no, I was working on that. Oh, shoot.
Oh, it's all done. If you can help me figure out the schematics of this one top to go on the reservoir for the carpet cleaner.
I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to for at least another hour or so.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. No worries.
Okay.
No worries.
Okay.
sounds
Just
good.
want to make sure
Thank you.
everything's all right. All right. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
will do.
Okay, so we'll just get back to the event. So what Lindsey Graham was arguing, he was also with Blumenthal, and they'd been there for a while, and they were arguing with Zelensky to end the war, but Zelensky's been told to wait the war out so they get someone else back in power and they can continue the war.
Who,
So they've already got...
Take it back. Who's Lisinski? You said? You mean Zelensky?
Zelensky. Yeah, sorry. I said Zelensky.
Okay, all right.
Can you just take that part out? Do you want me to start
Well,
again?
let's pick it up. Let's pick it up because I wanted to apologize to those who are watching live right now. I'm sorry all that happened.
Oh, okay.
That's that's the kind of stuff that can happen when you work out of your home, and that's one of the people who live here and having a problem with whatever. So my apologies to you for all that. We were talking about. So here's how we can pick it up. We were talking for because I'll edit this obviously before I post it on Rumble. We were talking about Lindsey Graham being in Ukraine. Where did we leave off before she
Well, so
came
we
in?
were in Ukraine and Zelensky and Graham were meeting, but they wanted to delay the war and they didn't want to finish the war. And Blumenthal and Graham were pushing him. And what he was using
Blumenthal.
is this. Remember the flight that went down that was meant to bring everybody into the war and they found out that they'd shot their own plane down? Remember the Ukraine flight? Well, apparently that was a big hoax to bring everybody into the war, and the
Oh, sure.
plane was loaded with dead bodies. And the
Uh,
real plane ended up in Diego Garcia, which is a military base. So I'm still working on that story. So keep your mind open on that. It's really hard to get all this information. More stuff's going to come out where I can confirm it or not confirm it. But supposedly he was blackmailing Zelensky with this information, which of course came out of the intelligence community. So I was kind of, and all of the people that were involved were also frequent guests on Epstein Island, another connection.
of course they were.
Lindsey Graham was using information from the Epstein files and contacts in the Epstein world from the intelligence communities to try to blackmail Zelensky to get him to end the war.
Who was trying
So
to
that-
blackmail Zelensky?
Yeah, he was trying to blackmail the blackmail. You know, they're the ones who did all the crimes, and so he's using
Who's they?
Well, the deep state, the EU, the people that NATO, the people that Zelensky really
The
represents.
ones who wanted
not the-
World War III. This was going to be their World War III. This was going to be the beginning of the Great Reset, as they call it. Or is it? No, they don't call it reset. What do they call it? No, maybe that is it.
yeah, they call it the reset.
Yeah, where millions of massive amounts of people will die in nuclear wars, and they will get their depopulation goal started in a great way by having so many people die in World War III. And then they're going to rebuild it, and they're going to have their little Star Trek utopia and their one world government, and the Klaus Schwabs and the Justin Trudeaus, who now find themselves out of power. This was their plan. And clowns like Gavin Newsom, governor of California, all on board with it, wanting the smart cities. That was the whole thing with the Palisades and people not getting granted permits to actually rebuild. The Coastal Commission, keeping people, which is not a government entity, but they act like they are, and they have tremendous amounts of power. And I don't understand why. This is so freaking dirty. And it's all boils down to satanic control of we the people, shut down people who stand up and say, no, I'm not going to take that shot. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to say those things. No, I'm not going to take that mark. People like us have to go. They don't want us here anymore. They want us out, just like I want them out. But, they're willing to kill us to do it. I'm not willing to kill anybody, unless of course they're threatening you or somebody else I care about, or kicking my dog. Then I'm going to take you down. But
well, it's funny that you bring up the Coastal Commission in the Palisades. If anybody's watching who's in that area, July 25th from 1 to 4 p.m., you can go on the New California State website and sign up to attend a free event. We'll be taking a public forum and record of all of the things that have happened to people. So if you want to come tell your story, or if you want to come share any information, please come see us. And that's newcaliforniastate.com, and go to events. That's next Saturday, the 25th of July.
newcaliforniastate.com. Yes, definitely start following what they're doing, because as far as I'm concerned now at this point, they are the only hope left for we who live in California and want to stay here. That's it. That's the light at the end of the tunnel for me, is newcaliforniastate.com. Check them out, please. And yeah, that's great that they're having an event right there at the Palisades. Wow.
You have to call in. We're not announcing where our event is going to be, but it's a pretty large venue. We're expecting a few hundred people anyway. So if you want to
Good.
come tell your story and meet like-minded people, and maybe just some of your neighbors from that area that you've lost contact with from all the disaster and all the stress that you've been
Um,
under.
good
It's a
idea.
great group of people that are very kind and supportive, and we welcome people from all different political backgrounds. Now, I want to kind of focus on the total hypocrisy of the EU and NATO's stance. So, on one hand, we have embargoes against Russian oil. But on the other hand, all of the countries like China, Brazil, India, and the EU countries
The
are still
BRICS
buying
nations,
our,
because they're all
right, there's
together now. They're trying to establish their own little one world government kind of thing. BRICS.
Well, but the thing is they're funding the Russians. Without the oil sales, the Russians couldn't continue the war. So it's a total hypocrisy. They're funding both sides. They want both sides to wipe each other out. And then the European United Nations crowd is going to go rape and pillage Russia, one of the largest reserves in the world of oil, gas, oil, beautiful people, and not a very big population. And these people, they don't understand Russians. Russians will fight until the last Russian is dead. And that's why they've never been defeated. And that's why I believe that America and Russia will once again align during this time, just like we would have not run the Revolutionary War without the help of the Russians. We would have not won the Civil War without the help of the Russians. We would
The
have not
second
won the American Revolution or
Second
World War
World
II.
War. The Second World War.
Exactly.
We
So we
partnered up
have
with
to,
Russia
and so why did they spent 75 years making us hate the Russians? Because in
because
the,
they went communist for one thing.
well, I understand that, but even under communism, the Russians still sided with America when it came down to it. So communism was something that happened. There was periods, just like in China, there was different things that happened that actually led to the actual communists. And this is what's really scary right now. The most atrocities and like the deaths in the concentration camps towards the end of the war, like my friend's grandfather was in a concentration camp, and his own son flew in below enemy radar and tried to rescue him. And the father would not go because he would not leave the people that he'd led during that time. And of course, right at the end of the war, anyone who did have a leadership role or any of that, they took them out because they didn't want anybody following them when they got out and the war ended, because the viciousness of war doesn't end when the battle ends. It ends in what happens the 10 years after the hostile force or whatever takes over, and the raping and the true raping and pillaging begins. And when the USSR fell apart, different power structures, the ones that had financed the Bolsheviks in the first place, finally got what they wanted. Broken countries that had been the backbone of that part of the world for thousands of years, all of a sudden they had what they wanted and they can go in and implement. Because with war, the good people are all dead. We found out Lord Mountbatten was a pedophile, and all the terrible things we found out about who really took over after World War I and what we're seeing today. And definitely wasn't what my great uncle went and lost his life in Asia. That's not what he died for in World War I, right? So they wanted to put a 500% tariff to block the hypocrisy. And so that was in negotiations, but of course it would destroy NATO. You can't, when you're playing both sides, you have to always be playing both sides. So there's 222 central banks that are controlled by the Rothschilds. And right now, Russia and other players in the world are not consenting to what the bankers want to do. And for Lindsey Graham, he was one of those people and he was taken out. And because he was challenging the interests of the banking cartels. They need the Iran war to continue. And who was making all the money in the Iran embargoes? with the embargoes. Kamala Harris, and I think I did this on the Kamala Harris series. I first came on your channel, and her husbands have made tens of millions of dollars on selling Iranian oil outside the embargo with a group called the Macquarie Group down in Australia. And they're in business like the head of the secret Iranian police. He's a member of that same group. So who are we really fighting? We're fighting each other. They're fighting to control everybody, and they don't care what side goes down. And again, Lindsey Graham was a proponent of ending the Iran war. And what do we have? The same players that were active up there. According to what I saw on a military reporting site, when they raided the Iranian government, they raided the Bank of Iran. And it shows all of they have all the internal records that show that Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation, Biden, Obama, and all the players, they now have the proof of who's really been funding the nuclear facility. And again, that's another reason I first came on your channel to talk about the Uranium One deal. I worked in the mining sector and was inadvertently involved in that deal because a company I worked with got a permit that allowed the uranium from Wyoming to leave the United States against the original Uranium One embargo. Because when you do a mine, you take contracts to provide a certain amount. Because we had extremely difficult sands in our area, we weren't producing the amount we needed. So we were able to buy from Uranium One, and our contract was different with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and they put in 3 different words that changed the intention of the precaution and allowed that uranium to leave the United States. And I also believe that's one of the reasons that they won't give us a sample of their uranium, because uranium, you can tell where it comes from. You can tell with precious metals, you can tell where they come from. And so that would demonstrate all of the Clinton Foundation cash. Remember
Obama
Clinton
and
cash?
Clinton's. Yes.
Right. So that's all ties together. A lot of people, there's always been the missing servers. And from what I've heard from inside sources, Hillary Clinton, and I knew this from just general reporting, they were taking over the embassy in Ukraine because they sponsored the Orange Revolution. And it was basically Hillary Clinton, and she's just a puppet in the wheel of the whole system. And when they're looking for the missing servers, they were in the Ukrainian embassy. And when Trump called Zelensky, he called him on those servers. That's why it was such a strange call. Hi, what are you doing? If you've ever been I've been on diplomatic calls because I worked with foreign governments. And, the secretary comes on, they introduce the call, there's a bunch of formalities. Zelensky just gets a call and picks it up in his office and says, "Oh, hey, Trump." And then there was this weird conversation because supposedly that was the missing server farm that was actually in the Ukrainian embassy. And that would make sense. The Orange Revolution happened a few years before the US election in 2016. So that was all kind of fermenting, and they were going to use also, I believe, that nuclear facility that they had recommissioned and start threatening Russia, but they were going to blame Russia for the nuclear attack and bring the whole world into it. Because all countries have a safeguard. Once they're hit, the computers take over and the computers start launching worldwide. Nuclear war in today's, and this is just my understanding from military briefings and people that I've watched, that once one nuclear bomb goes, the rest of the world automatically
That's
arms.
like that horrible movie from the 80s with Matthew Broderick where the computer starts doing war games and starts shooting off nuclear missiles.
And I think that's pre-demonstration because they're always AI. It's the people programming the AI that are making the machines. It's not the internet that's making child porn. It's the people who watch the internet and sell things on the internet who are making child porn. It's not the internet itself. It's like the gun isn't getting up out of your cupboard and shooting your wife's girlfriend or your girlfriend. In today's day and age, you can shoot your wife's girlfriend when you find her in bed with her, right? I mean, it's not those inanimate objects, and we're being designed to think, oh, the computers just took over. Somebody
yeah.
put that takeover program in the computer somewhere along the way. I'm sorry, right? Okay, so we're talking about Iran a little bit. So for 47 years, we've been supposedly going back and forth with Iran. Now, Trump asked Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, for help in Iran. And his basic response is yes, they can send troops, but not till 2035 and not until they meet their contributions. Because if they did send troops, they don't have the budget to pay them or supply them or house them because their countries are bankrupt right now. And we have been footing the bill. If we walk, those countries are, that's why there's so much insanity right now. Because if the United States pulls out of Europe, there was talking about sending 20,000 or 30,000 troops to Ukraine. They would literally have to take the guards off Buckingham Palace and call up all the reservists. And then they would leave their countries with nobody protecting them, which again is, I believe, part of the strategy. Get all the EU young people involved in the war in Ukraine and Russia, and then leave your countries open for capture because you've just let in 40 million Muslims. And not that there's not a lot of good faithful Muslim people. I've spent time, I've been welcome into Islamic people's homes. Like most Christians, most Muslims have never actually read their Bible. They're converted under the death of threat. And most people who are Catholics today, their relatives were forcibly converted under the threat of death. That's one of the reasons they left Europe, and why a lot of the contingencies that first came to America were Protestants, because they were getting away with the Catholic Church was a political structure. You and I have talked about
and the Church of England getting away from it.
Well, the Catholic Church is what caused so many people to leave their countries and just get up and leave. And the Protestant Reformation is what caused a good chunk. And if you just watch the World Cup right now, you're seeing how terribly America and American people are portrayed in the media. Because if they start getting more people leaving Europe, who's going to pay for all the benefits and have all the money? If Europeans get up and start leaving in mass like they did years ago, they're going to just have everybody that they brought in. Who is going to pay all of the taxes for all of the free housing and the free medical care? And they're not done with their plan yet. So they're trying to convince.
That whole World Cup thing and the soccer thing and FIFA, that was such a fine example of greed turning into a tremendous benefit. So they come here and they, for the first time, they're having these big, like the World Series or the Super Bowl kind of thing for soccer, and in American cities. And yeah, I've seen all the videos of the people who are here, who've never been here, and they're literally saying, "We've been lied to. These people are wonderful. This place is extraordinary." And I no wonder why everybody wants to come here. And
there's
now
still people dying every day to get here. So
now
no matter what
they're
they're saying,
now they're going back home with this new information. And so here's the FIFA folks. Just all they were was greedy, and they want everybody to start worshiping soccer and following that just for more money and money and money. And we're sending back ambassadors for the United States of America back to their own country.
Well, and personally, I know that people love football, but I have friends. I have one friend who was he was a huge, big, thought to be one of the big all-time stars. His dad had been a player. And, he got hurt at the end of the third season, and he still can't sit down for more than 15 minutes. So if I was a parent, I don't know if I'd put my kids in football just because of what we know about spinal and head injuries. I think soccer is definitely a great option, and everybody can play. It doesn't cost any money. All you need is a ball and some dirt.
Which is why the school districts have been pushing it for years. Because it's so much cheaper. They don't have to be buying uniforms. They don't have to be doing a lot of stuff. It's real easy. Okay, here's a ball, and buy some cleats and get out there and start kicking this around.
Right.
You'll love it,
Well, also
kids.
everybody can afford it. I know friends who have, especially if
Exactly.
you're on a good team, you start traveling with football.
Yeah.
It does just the outfits and everything cost a lot more money. And, but I mean, I don't want to be like, Simone's even against football. Okay. I've given you enough bad news today. I am not against football. Okay. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about, we had this mass event with Lindsey Graham, and it kind of took the news cycle. We also have the election stuff going on that's pointing to a lot of the same exact people that I just pointed out were the ones that are really controlling the system. So I'm trying to tie things together because it's just like this big octopus and the tentacles are everywhere and we're seeing it play out in front of us. And especially when you're more aware, you can see like, okay, this doesn't make sense. Are we being played, or is our mind being prepared? You kind of think about it. So as I noticed in some of the two big deaths that have occurred in, say, the last 6 to 8 months were Charlie Kirk and Lindsey Graham. And what I've noticed in one of these big media things takes the news cycle away from something is that usually has something to do with Israel getting more power in the United States. So when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, that day in Congress, they were voting on the bill that would pay IDF soldiers pensions and would pay the IDF. So we're
Wait,
paying
what?
them.
What?
Yes.
What?
Yes. So we're paying, and remember they
IDF, by
gave the
the way, for
military.
anyone who doesn't know, is Israeli Defense Force. That's their military. So we, United States taxpayers, we're going to pay the salaries for those who are in the
We
IDF
are
in Israel.
paying the salaries of the IDF. The Israelis have the Americans or foreign nation pay for everything, and then they keep all the good stuff for themselves. So this is not against, again, I'm a Christian, I follow the Torah. This isn't that I'm talking about the political and financial and military industrial complexes that rule our world. And if anybody thinks you're being biased or whatever, just go to the Epstein files and read what this group of people thinks about Protestants, Christians, white people, black people, Asian people. They just believe they are the superior people and everyone else is scum and do not deserve to live if they don't deserve their system. So what I'm going to build up to right now, so during that time in countries like Brazil, did similar things because they are going to extract all the Nazis, which a lot of people running Israel today are the descendants of the Nazis. Hitler's top people were Nazis. Hitler was far left. He was not far right. He was a socialist. That's another way that they've made this sound.
Oh, they've lied
Hitler
to us
was
for
a
years.
socialist.
Our
He could have
teachers
not been
in the
far right.
media have lied to us
Yes,
for years. Yes, the
because
National
they're trying to
Socialist
push the
Party.
same.
That's what
Yeah,
Nazi stands for. It's an acronym for National Socialist Party. Please don't let
exactly.
people continue getting away with saying, "Oh, it's a far right group." Not at all.
No, they
Very left. It
they
is.
focus on the
Was then, is now.
nationalism, but they don't focus on this. It was the socialism part that got Germany in trouble. It wasn't the nationalism part, right? All people are nationalists. We just had the World Cup. It's about people fighting each other's countries in a positive way and finding the best
And if your
winner.
team loses, destroying each other like they did in Morocco.
Well, right. And, this is the insanity.
Sorry,
When people
just
have
threw that
nothing
out.
left to believe in, look at our
Yeah.
world today. People will watch sports for 4 or 5 months, depending on what season, and they'll vegetate out. Their family stuff will get canceled. They'll get behind on work. They'll have friends over and go to bars and spend money they shouldn't be spending right now. So,
Well,
sports is
you
a
were on a good
distraction.
track. I derailed you. My apologies. We were talking
Okay,
about the arrogance of
right.
uh, of the Israelis and like and why are we paying for their military?
You're
Why are
right.
we paying for their
Okay,
soldiers and their airmen and their What the
because
hell? How
they
long has that been going
survive
on?
by stealing and laundering money from foreign countries. That's how Israel survives. We're paying, each person in Israel gets $35,000 a year just from the American. If you divided how much money that we give them, that's more than most people get on Social Security here. I guess what I'm trying
It
to
is.
explain is Israel is part of the City of London. It's a private foreign hostile corporation. It's owned by the City of London, when my understanding is the King of England is actually the true monarch of Israel. And he himself believes himself to be descended. The royal family is descended, but they wiped out the royal family line and they've replaced it with the bloodline families. So he considers himself, and if you've ever watched King Charles lately, he openly practices Islam. He hasn't given an Easter speech in several Easters. Muslims don't believe in Easter. He openly meets with mullahs and reads the Quran in Arabic. So that's what we see. If he can't control the British population as they are, he will bring in other people that he feels he can control. But of course, they will turn on him as soon as they have his power. Yeah.
Simone and I, hopefully next week we can get this done. I want to do a whole show just concentrated on Islam.
Okay, yeah, and I do have a really great series on Islam, and my goal is not to make people angry at it's to inform people who are Islamic of what their holy books say, because they read in Arabic, they pray in Arabic. That's not their native language. And I have literally been present when people who are devout Muslims converted, because they are searching. They already believe in the Old Testament. They already believe in Jesus. So they're already way, way down the line. They pray 5 times a day. They live their life according to their faith. And again, it's been repackaged so it fits today's world. Like if you go on to look up Muhammad was married to a 6-year-old, it'll say, oh, the Hadith and the Quran and even Aisha's own testimony say she was 6. But modern scholars say, so it's like saying Jesus, it's like going to the Bible and saying, well, we don't believe that. We're just going to change it 2,000 years later because it fits society today. And so anytime you look up a controversial topic, especially if you just Google it on AI, it'll always have this thing later. But modern day scholars say that. And so do you either believe in the book and the religion as it was founded and practiced for 1,000 years, or you change it? And they know that when their people find out, 26% of the Muslim youth are not following the faith. And I believe in another 5 years, that'll be double that. So the only reason they're beating us by numbers is because they have so many children. They're not beating us because they're converting people. So anyway, so we kind of talked about what was going on with Charlie Kirk and how they were passing this laws. In other countries were doing it because the Israelis that are going to be found guilty of war crimes for killing all these people are going to flee to other countries, just like the Nazis did, because they're the children of the Nazis. That Nazism is based in all the stuff we see in the United Nations was founded by Hitler. NATO was founded by Hitler's 2 top generals. The United Nations was founded in the New World Order. It was Hitler who was talking about the New World Order. And who did we have in the United States that followed that dream? Was George Bush Sr., because his father was Prescott Bush, who tried to implement Nazism here in the States. People don't remember Hitler was on Time magazine at least 3 times during the 30s because they
Man of
were
the year.
trying. And where were all
Man
the
of the
Nazis?
year.
They were in New York and they were in
Time
New
magazine
Jersey.
man of the year.
Exactly. But the
Nobody
Nazi
brings that up.
concentration is still there. That's where we're seeing all this socialism moving, right? The people that they'd been driven out of Ukraine and Russia and those areas, and they ended up in Germany, and then they infiltrated in that way. And like Epstein, I did a thing on Epstein once. I took his family back 1,000 years. They're literally from the area that's being fought over right now. And they have historically been child traffickers. That was their business. They were driven out by the Russians under threat of death, and they moved to Epstein, Germany. I don't have all of his family names in the past, but Epstein is the name of a city they moved to because they had to get rid of their old name. So they changed their name to Epstein. And within 10 years, that was the hub of human trafficking in that part of Europe. So there's nothing new under the sun. These are generational families who've moved around the earth, and they believe it's their mission to control us because we're too stupid. They believe that we don't deserve to live if we don't consent to their system. And again, we see
She's right.
Nazism, authoritarianism. Excuse me?
I said she's right. You're
Ooh.
right.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
I'd love to hear that. Can you say that more? No.
I always say that. G. Edward Griffin, who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, and really exposing the Federal Reserve and educating so many people that here's what's really going on in the government. It's not a government agency, by the way. There's nothing federal about the Federal Reserve, and there are no actual reserves. It's an insane system set up to keep us in debt all our lives and to loan back our own tax dollars to us, and then we have to pay interest on those loans. The whole thing is so dirty and crooked, and everybody who's ever talked about we need to get rid of this, like John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy,
Right.
say what you will about who assassinated him and why, he was standing up and saying, we're going to end the Federal Reserve. We're going to end the CIA. It's all very subversive, very dirty, dark, and nothing good comes of it. And President Nixon taking us off the gold standard, or at least agreeing to it, signing off on it, was the beginning of the end for us financially. It is.
Well, I think that there was a lot. I think Henry Kissinger, I believe that Henry Kissinger was an extracted Nazi. And I could never understand, even as a child, why he had so much power in our government. I literally, my
I
first
know.
act
Who is this guy? Why is he in such high places? I understand. I agree.
well, this
We
is a
were young
child's
when all that was.
mind.
We were young when all that was happening. But
Well,
so
I
G.
literally
Edward.
I wrote a letter to the president because I was opposed to his trip to China. And I got a
Oh, that
letter
was another
back, and I
thing.
got to be in the town newspaper. And that was my first rebellious act. It was 1971 or 72. I don't remember.
You
And
were
so
about
that was,
8,
I was 6,
6. Ah!
6. And and then my mom had a catering business. So I was always in charge of setting the tables. And you know how literal children are when they said it was going to be a round table discussion and they were going to have lunch. You know, our teacher was explaining to us. So I drew a picture of a round table and showed him the correct place setting for a formal dinner. And I
Oh,
included
that's
that in the
funny.
letter.
So back to G. Edward Griffin. He is, if not 90, awfully close to it.
He's
He's way up there.
94.
94.
Okay, but
He
I
was a
want to get back. Okay.
he was a keynote speaker at this event that you attended in Las Vegas, and I would like to know what that was all about. And then we'll probably need to wrap this up pretty quickly. But you wanted to cover something else, though.
Well, I didn't get to okay, you know how I was saying, whenever we have one of these mass shooting events, I always look over here instead of looking over here because that takes the news cycle, whatever they'd been droning on about for 3 weeks, all of a sudden dramatically changes. So, what were they voting on the day Lindsey Graham passed away? The Democrats blocked, and this is luckily the Democrats blocked this bill. It was the Senate National Defense Authorization Act, and it was a treasonous act. They put this in this act, and luckily the Democrats voted against us, or we would have this put into law the day Lindsey Graham died. It would have combined the USA and the Israeli military and forced a technological exchange. First, they stole our nuclear secrets, remember? Then they stole the Promise software, remember? So they've been stealing our military secrets for years. And they've had, with the Promise software, they had a backdoor into intelligence and governments all over the world. So right now they must not be getting what they need through our spy system, because they tried to add this to the military bill. And basically it would require, the United States is 20 years ahead of anybody on military fighting. And we have equipment that people don't even know about that's so far advanced. I'm understanding that nuclear power is here to stay, but nuclear as a weaponry is far outdated compared to what they have. So it was called the U.S. Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. And we have to lobby for this not to pass. If anybody's into calling Congress and doing these things, this needs to be reported. Charlie, you should do a whole show and break down the acts so people that are doing can see what they're doing. And one of the things that we can use as a recent example is the way they did in Iran, took over a lot of the important locations, but what they did in Venezuela is they used this technology. And according to people familiar with it, the technology removed the skin from the guards. It's some kind of like an electric magnetic pulse kind of thing. And so that day that Lindsey Graham died, they were passing this legislation, and they're trying, the Israeli military is trying to get they've stolen all their advances from somebody. And right now they need to, because right now with our technology, we could take out Israel now if we wanted. But they've been able to prevent that because they've been spying and blackmailing our leaders for a long time. So this to me is one of the most important things that didn't happen over the last few weeks. And we really need to get our eyes open and find out that what's really going on in our legislative bodies, and why do we keep giving Israel so much money when majority of Americans are opposed to the war in Israel and what they're doing. And again, this has
No,
nothing to
that's
do
not
with the
true.
average.
I don't
Yeah.
buy that at all. I will completely disagree with that.
What?
No, I don't think that the majority of Americans don't want what's going on in Gaza to happen. No, we realize that this nation has been tortured by an enemy state that they welcomed into their area and gave them this land. Okay, here's
Yeah,
where
well, I don't believe that, because I watch the inner workings. And I mean, Israel itself is an illegal construct given by the British powers who wanted to recapture the Middle East and take supply of the oil. It's the Israeli people. Israel itself got caught bombing its own mosques in the Middle East so that people would come to Israel, and then there would be millions of people there, and then they would be able to legitimize it. Because supposedly Israel's for all the people, the Israelis that have been denied. Why don't you ask the millions of Ethiopians who died of starvation that can directly link their lineage to the tribe of David and King Solomon, who were denied entrance to Israel, and then millions and millions died of starvation. So no, I do not think that's true. And as history tells us, the leader, they're not blood relations to the line of David. They have adopted Judaism just like we've adapted, but it's illegal to get a blood test in Israel without a court order, because so many Israelis are finding out they have no relation to the tribe of Israel, and that they actually were forcibly converted about 1500 years ago. And that's fine. We follow a foreign Far East religion. I mean, people don't understand. The second Christian church in the world and the following nations were all in Africa, where the Garden of Eden was, because the story we hear in the Bible is the story of bloodlines from the descendant of Adam. The name of Africa used to be Alkebulan, and that literally translates to the Garden of Eden. So there's a lot of confusion about who the different groups of people are. You can go listen to Winston Churchill's speech about the differences in the forcibly converted of the people who continue to practice Baal worship, which is the story throughout the Bible, and which is the story of the group of people we're fighting
Making
right
a
now.
golden calf while Moses was up on Mount Sinai getting the 10 Commandments. They're melting down their jewelry and making a calf to worship. Yeah, they got a long history of that crap.
Well, right,
But
and so again, there's a huge pushback of the people in Israel. They're not totally supported. We have to understand that our media is controlled by the same group of the military. The media is a part of the military industrial complex. And if you don't think that, just go out to Burbank and see that the major studios are all located in between the military industrial complex buildings like Raytheon and McDonnell Douglas. And I grew up in that area. That's where everybody's fathers worked. That was the industry there. And it's also because the military industrial complex was financed by the City of London Rothschild banking system. And so was Hollywood. The original people that were sent to Hollywood and opened the studios were agents of the British Crown. They were agents of the foreign hostile banking cartel that controls our country today. And their job was to change societal values through media and to create a different mindset.
Again, it
And
all
to,
boils down to Satan. It all does. But just one more thing about Israel, and I've heard all this, and that it's not that's not God's Israel. He didn't bring that together. Well, I wouldn't dare to think I know what God is thinking. But the simple fact that it is there and that's scriptural, that it was going to happen, that the Jewish people were going to come back together and they were going to have their land again. And it's where
okay, but
Jerusalem
see,
is. And Jerusalem, hang on, Jerusalem is still where it always was. That is Jerusalem. That is Israel, regardless of who started it in 1948. And so
and
the word,
that's the Zionist view, right? But the false tribe, this is what
that has
Orthodox. Okay,
nothing
I
to
know a
do
lot of,
with
okay, you
being a
can go
Zionist.
to
I don't.
a French neighborhood in New York where there's Orthodox Jews. You can go to a French neighborhood in Canada where they walk around in their black clothes. You can go to the Middle East. And they do not believe that. It is God who will bring this about, not man. And this is the big dispute. And that you can tune in to Zionism, which is a Lutheran, ancient Zoroastrian, Iranian concept, or you can talk to the original Jews. People who are not Zionists in New Israel, they live in ghettos just like they did in Germany. They're not allowed to work in certain areas. The same exact, because they are not Zionists. They believe that they're waiting for God to fix it, not man. And so you're just explaining to me the huge debate in the secular Jews who adopted Judaism as an identity and actual Orthodox Jews, and who adopted Zionism, which was actually the first Zionists that went down there were Lutherans. And Zionism, the 1,000-year rule and all that, is ancient Zoroastrian, was long before Christianity, and a lot of Hebrew and Christian faith kind of overlap because we were captured in slavery by the Persians over time. So you're pointing out the actual argument in Judaism itself. In the States and in the mega churches, we hear the Zionist movement. But I listen to extensive Orthodox Jews and their discussions, and they're from all over the world. You can go in panels just like any religion. You can tune into their meetings. You can tune in. And this is what's going on in the Jewish community itself right now, right? Because they are not Zionists. They disagree. They don't want what's going on. And you could go on channels and you could see people who were born in the US and they go back to their kibbutz and they go back for their time and they actually see what's happening on the Gaza Strip. And so who is Qatar? So when Israel gave all the money and the US gave all this money, where did all the money go? It was immediately stolen and sent to Qatar, where all the real Palestinian wealthy people live. And they've left all those people there to be slaughtered and murdered so they can launder the money and they can get the money from the Arab states. But one of the things that they were against Trump. You remember how Qatar is where really the PLO people have stolen all the money and where they all live, and they're also the Qatar. Everyone says Qatar here, but it's Qatar.
That's what I say too. I just had this discussion yesterday with somebody. It's Qatar. I don't care what the media keeps telling me it is. I don't care
Well,
what
if
Tucker
you say
Carlson
Qatar,
says.
people don't know what you're saying on American
I
TV.
say
So
I
I just
do.
say
Qatar.
it the way they
That's
say it. I know.
exactly.
And so they're the ones, and again, where is all that money? It's all being laundered through the banking system, through all the wealthy people. And you can look into the context of people in the Epstein files, all that money that we're giving to the war, that we're giving to the Middle East, it's being laundered right back out. It's definitely not going to the people. Plus, they're raiding all the wealth of those countries. They're getting the gold. They're getting, like with Gaddafi, right? Gaddafi was trying to get out of this system. That's why they killed him, right? He was trying to remove this.
He was
That's
the
what he
leader
was
of Libya,
doing.
and
Right.
I've always puzzled what the hell was that all about, and that was a Hillary Clinton thing. She's the one that
Well,
really
and Hillary
spearheaded that.
Clinton had it
Secretary
out.
Clinton.
You know, his son, did his son commit suicide, or I can't remember, but his son was put through, like when you talk to Jesse Chobatar and people who witnessed were in the MK Ultra mind control programs at the Biltmore Vanderbilt estate, where Justin Trudeau was the youngest Rockefeller, and Gaddafi's son, I guess, was gay. I think maybe he was gay. I can't remember the exact story, but Gaddafi didn't want anyone else's children, because in order to be in the system, your children have to be pledged to it. So he was trying to get out of it. So they went and raided. I mean, they had a super high standard of living. People were educated. People were happy there. They raided his gold and his weapons so they can invade Syria. That's what they've been using to fund the Syrian overtake, right? And if you understand Islam, and if you understand the New World Order and this one world government where we all worship Lucifer, or we all worship Saturn or Baal or whatever name you want to call it, that's the Islamic faith. That's the same religion. Muhammad was openly a Baal worshiper until he was 40 years old. He was consecrated, so he was dedicated to Baal, and that was child sacrifice and all the things that we see. So these religions are really ancient, and they kind of preclude it. If you look around, it always kind of circles back to the same thing, whether it's in the high levels of the Methodist Church, the Mormon Church, the Islam Church. I'm not super familiar with the Middle Eastern, but I know like the Dalai Lama was found out, and him and Sister Teresa and Hillary Clinton had sex slave holidays, and that's what they were using the orphanages they were in charge for. So I think there's something really interesting. You know how Trump and Kushner daughter are talking about that island of Albania, right? And how it's a national preserve, and there was a big dispute. I guess apparently they're building. Well, Albania is in the hub of child trafficking in the Eastern Bloc, and I was just wondering if they were just bringing attention to that island and what might have been going on in Albania. But it looks like they've broken ground, and they're actually making a national park of Albania into a resort for the wealthy. And this again draws concern, because we've got indication that Branson Island had stuff going on in it. Biden Island was a former submarine base, right? He had taken over, and there was a bunch of illegal activity. And Ghislaine Maxwell was a submarine commander. She could drive a submarine. She could pilot a helicopter. So these people aren't just regular people. And once we kind of see the patterns, wealthy people buying islands really doesn't seem to be good for the rest of us. So I'm
No.
just curious as to why Kushner is there and why Kushner is involved with the negotiations in Iran. Because according to Bibi Netanyahu himself, whenever he would visit the Kushner family, he would stay overnight in Jared's room. And he repeatedly says this at speaking. Like, doesn't that sound kind of strange to you? And then Jared Kushner always gets a really weird look on his face. But I think it's a way of BB King saying he's
BB
again,
King, you mean?
not BB King, Bibi Netanyahu. Again, that's not his real name. His real name's something very Eastern
Oh yeah, you
European.
told me that one time. I was like, what?
Yeah, I have it somewhere, it's Kowalski or something like that.
All right.
Because he was born, in Connecticut. He wasn't born in Tel Aviv. If you look it up now, they have it that he's born in Tel Aviv. Maybe he was born, but he lived in the U.S. and was educated there. Again, a lot of things that are going on in the world. These people have havens, and they just go somewhere else after they've committed the crime, and then they move somewhere else. And what I was going to say about Qatar is that how they gave Trump the airplane, and apparently he was flying it to Europe the last time he went, and it got leaked that it was highly bugged, but it got leaked that Trump was going to die in some kind of plane accident. And the New York Times had apparently already had the piece written.
Right.
Have you
Media
heard
was
that
already
story?
prepared to release that Trump died in tragic airplane accident, Air Force One.
So he
Yes.
had his backup plane fly to Europe and pick him up. So I think this is one of the reasons we're getting really, really close. I mean, Trump didn't say one thing in his speech that you and I hadn't seen in the independent media for 10 years now. So I was really glad that the FBI and the intelligence agencies and the other government people finally Googled something and got the details, because there was pretty substantial evidence of all of this even prior. And then just to loop it all in, how we're seeing all these different elements coming and going and different people. Like, for instance, I've always been out on Steve Bannon. I mean, I'm not a person, if someone does something right, then I say they did it right. I'm not a cult of personality person.
Good.
Right.
Me
I'm not
neither.
emotionally involved with these people who definitely aren't emotionally involved with me. Right. So we're going to find out that some of the people we saw as good people, and I'd actually discussed this a few times. You could really see the corporate media take over of the independent media since Trump got elected again, using the independent media. And it's really, really hard to get visibility between all the people. And why do certain people, every time you click on, there's a video short of them, and you've got 500 friends, and they're all podcasters, and you never see one of their names come up out of all the people. And some of them have 100, 200,000 people. YouTube is obviously a government entity. Most of the tech companies are part of the military industrial complex. That's the reason we repeatedly fund them, but we never get anything back. That sounds like they're really us, right? So I know this is going to upset some people, but I've been kind of listening in on Candace Owens and been concerned about some of the things. And someone I know who's a high-level Black minister was filling out this information that the intelligence agencies have been watching Candace, and that she's been to Meloni of Italy. She was directly asked by the leader of Italy, Putin of Russia, and Spain's communist prime minister. She's been in secret meetings with them. Her husband is a lord in the House of Lords, and they're one of the wealthiest families. They're the Copper King. And through all
Whose
this,
husband?
Candace Owens
Really?
is married into the British monarchy.
I did not know that. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. That's
yeah.
funny.
So that's okay. So let's just, and really, I like Candace. She's got a lot of great news, just because, again, we don't know who's doing what on behalf of who. So I'm just putting out what is going on. I think that Tucker Carlson could have been on some of the same trips, or some type of trips, not exactly the same trips. He's also been under close scrutiny because of some of the people that are some of the things that are coming up shortly after their visits that are anti-Trump, kind of anti the USA. And now Candace originally was a far left liberal anti-Trumper. And she was when she first came into the spotlight, she was promoting like a doxing technology, a way that you could track people on the internet who posted negative things on your comment section. I mean, I'm just kind of like It's not a technical explanation, okay? But it was like basically a doxing program, and it would have really violated and put a lot of people in danger and really removed a lot of their right to privacy and their right to free speech without punishment. As you know, these people end up showing up at people's houses, get them fired from their jobs, etc. So, and then all of a sudden, she's far right on the Ben Shapiro show. So she goes from being a far left liberal that has a new world order technology, then she's on the Ben Shapiro show and she has an open and hostile thing going on with them. And then she ends up with Turning Point USA, another like, you know, group with some of the same backers and things like that. And now she's a never Trumper again. She's opposed to the war. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, be careful who we listen to and what they're saying, and not so much what they're saying or the innuendo. One of the other things when I first, because I do listen to Candace a lot and I think she's a good researcher. But when I researched who her husband was and the things he'd been involved in from a small child, like all the secret Skull and Bones organizations at Oxford, he was the head of one of them. I just became very concerned. And then when she told me she converted to Catholicism after studying the history of the Catholic Church. And if you'll notice, a lot of the people that are in the mainstream media, even though a small percentage of our population is Catholic, most of the people who are the independent media over the past year, at first they were atheists, and then they converted to Catholicism.
Russell Brand. I was all excited when he started talking about becoming a Christian. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then I find out it's Roman Catholic. Oh man.
Well, and Joe
Look, how many of our
yes,
Supreme Court justices now are
they
Catholic?
all are, except one's Episcopalian, right? So I don't know what Ketanji Brown is, but the last time I looked it up, the 6 were Catholics and 1 was Episcopalian. The FBI is predominantly, so they are agents, whether they know it or not, of the Vatican power structure system. And I guess that's where I want to close off. Like you're saying, how do these people work together? How do they are what they are part of, and all this MK Ultra and all of these torture programs and all this, they're part of what we call the sovereign military. And that's through the Knights of Malta. And if you noticed, a few years ago, the Vatican called all the assets of the Knights of Malta back to the Vatican Bank because the Vatican is bankrupt. The United States taxpayer has been paying the salaries of the Holy See and all the pedophile priests for the last, since Biden was in office. That may have stopped. Yeah. So we have been paying the Holy See's pensions because they're bankrupt, because the systems around the world they control are all failing. And according to, I don't know if this is true or not, but you've seen the reporting that they took the gold that had been stolen from every country and it's been recaptured and redistributed back into each country so they can join the new monetary system. I mean, I pray that's true, but I don't know. We've been in the grips of this Vatican Roman system, which was really more like the Anunnaki system or something, for 3,000 years. And I'm praying that we're going to break out of it. So when we see all these things going on and we see these different organizations, I don't know. I know it is. We live in Northern California, and when you go into a town and you see like the Rotary sign, which is part of the sovereign military, when you see the Freemason sign, you know how when you go into a town, there'll be all those signs and it'll say what groups. So those signs are telling you what agents of the sovereign military are operating in your community. So we can get into signs and symbols at some later date, but they're going to become more and more important. The CIA symbol itself is like, it's showing the destruction of humanity, of the destruction of the United States. if you understand what the symbols on the CIA system means.
Wow.
Jesus said we need to know the signs, right? He told us to watch the signs. And so that's what we need to be doing.
Signs of the
even though
heavens. Signs in the heavens. Yes.
Right. But these are signs from the heavens, right? The reason we have flags and monuments and amulets is because each symbol on those amulets represents something. Each color on the flag represents something. So the blue is for the water, the red is for blood, the white is for innocence, right? We see the Islamic flags. What are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, especially countries like Afghanistan? Their flag has all the 4 colors of the horsemen of the apocalypse, and so do most communist countries. So we need to look at what they're telling us when they show us their symbols, because they're not just symbols, they actually have deep-rooted and historic meaning. So the sovereign military is something people should look into. It was created by the Knights of Malta, which in around the 1700s. And all of these organizations, the way they're tied together from the Club of Rome to the New World Order is through this sovereign military. And they are international, which means they have no nation. They derive their power from contracts and agreements. They have no international, means there is no nation. It's just a construct. It doesn't exist.
My head is already spinning from so much here. So
Okay.
it really is. Just a little overwhelmed. So I really want to do a show next week though about Islam.
Okay.
I really want to hear what you've found. She's been studying the Quran. She's been studying it in Arabic and studying Arabic, the language. And it's just fascinating stuff. And I want to know more. Thank you, Simone Anderson. Where do we find you? How do we follow what you're doing?
Simone M. Anderson at AOL. It looks like you've got my Lost in Translation show. That's one word on Rumble. I'm also, I appear every other Tuesday right now, but there's a whole series there on a channel called Aquarius Rising South Africa. And you can just Google Aquarius Rising South Africa, Simone Anderson, and it'll bring up 8 or 10. I'm basing a book that I'm hoping to come out with in the new year that's going to tie together all the structures, because my focus is always exploring the structures that rule our lives in hopes that never again will the truth be lost in translation.
Amen to that. Anderson, by the way, is S-O-N, not S-E-N.
Yes.
Thank you, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right, Charlie.
That was a lot. A whole lot. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for supporting this show. Thank you for buying some of the merchandise in my store. More and more people are wanting this mug right here. Let's talk about politics and religion. Big old 15-ounce coffee mug. Of course, it's red. And you'll find that, and hats and shirts. And this is my favorite hat on there right now. At my website, charliesimons.com, or you can just give if you want to help support the ministry, like somebody did just recently. The most sizable donation I've had since I started the show. It was very, very humbling and encouraging. So if you want to help too, please do. charliesimons.com, CharlieSimons.com. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America. Most importantly, America bless God.